my favorite topic to actually go over, because this is what I've been working on for the longest time, the seals. So today we're going to be talking about, where are we? We're in Revelation 4 through about 7. We're probably not going to read, or we could read if you want. We could actually go through and read. But I have a feeling that our conversation, we're probably going to want to do more talking than actually reading to get, kind of straight on some things. I do have my charts, but today we're talking timeline stuff. And so Revelation 4 is the view of the throne room. Revelation 5 is, what is Revelation 5? Here, let me share my screen. How you doing, Paul?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm ready to talk about this. I haven't talked about it in a really long time. There you go. Can you guys see that? Hang on. I'm trying to look on the show
Yeah,
to see
I,
if
I
it's...
think it's important material that, be cognizant of, but
Yeah.
we're supposed to know the signs of the times.
Yeah, you can see it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so well that's the thing is we're told to be watchful. It is true that Matthew 24 says that no one knows the days. Let's actually read that. This is like the number one objection is in Matthew 24, I think it is. I think it's in around 42. Yeah, no one knows the day or hour. So let's read some of the context on this before we get into, because we're going to talk timeline stuff. We're going to be talking day and hour. It was interesting. I didn't share it in the channel, but Nelson Walters recently did a video that's pretty much in agreement with my timeline now, which is kind of nice when people start agreeing with me. But this is probably the number one objection that comes up when you talk about timelines, right? Like, are we in the end times? So let's read this. Matthew 24:36. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Sounds like we need a little context. Let's actually start it a little bit sooner. Let's start in 32. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. Okay, so we have a parable about knowing when summer's coming, right? So you're going to paying attention to the creation to understand what's coming. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. So this is in context of the end times. So when you see all these things that were written in Matthew 24, know that it's at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. So a lot of people like to use this to say that it's pointless to look. But in the context, he literally uses creation as an indication that summer is near. So my usual argument for this is, okay, so maybe we don't know the day or hour. What constitutes a day or hour? If we know within 2 days, that's not the day or hour. That's within 2 days. And if within 2 days, what about a week? What if we know a week beforehand? Because that's about the time Noah started loading into the ark, right? So this isn't a really good reason not to pay attention, not to look at what's going on.
Could I jump in just a second here, Watchful?
Yeah, totally.
Something I notice is the language day and hour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And to me, what that means is Tuesday at 3 o'clock, between
Exactly.
3 and 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
And somebody may think Tuesday at 2 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
or it may happen at Tuesday at 2 o'clock. So they may know the day,
Right. But they
but
don't know
not
the
day
hour.
and hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the exact point. Is like, so we shouldn't, anybody who uses this as an excuse to not pay attention should really look at this a little bit closer, because there's a lot of details in this in Matthew 24. Like, they ask, I'm not going to read this all, because if we just read scripture, we'll blow out the hour. I really want to do more talking about this than actually going through the scripture today, because I think most people on the channel are aware of all this information. I'm looking forward to the conversation mostly for today. I think that's going to be what really provides value for people. But so they ask him, tell us when these things will be and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age. And then he gives them a ton of stuff to watch for, a ton of stuff: wars, rumors of wars, tribulation, people turning against each other. Basically everything that's been happening for the last 4 years. And then, then why would he say no one knows the day or hour, as if we shouldn't even pay attention? It just doesn't make sense. So I think you're on point in that, like, we don't know the exact hour, right?
You know, I
But
I
go ahead.
had some people that use the day and hour language
Mm-hmm.
to just say, well, I'm not going to pay attention then. Don't
Right.
even talk to me about the end times. And I pulled out a piece of scripture. I'm not sure the citation to it, but it was Jesus talking to the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, red sky at night, sailors delight. I'm paraphrasing, but
Right.
red sky in the morning, sailors take warning.
Totally.
But you don't know, uh, the you should know the seasons of that are set out in the Bible, but you don't. You're hypocrites.
Yeah.
And when I point that out to people, of course, nobody wants to be a hypocrite. So they started dialing in and paying attention to the end times and really looking at it. And when you do, boy, does it stand out that we're in the end times.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're on YouTube. I'm not on here because I want fame. I don't want people seeing my face. I'm not on here to bring people to myself. It's to draw attention that where we are. The entire point of the Two Witnesses live channel is to bring attention and be watchful. Be observant of the things that are happening, so that you can know what to expect, because pretty much everything in the Bible is written about this day. It's literally the entire Bible is instruction for as far as we're concerned. Sure, it meant different things to different people throughout the ages, but to us today, it it is written as instruction for what we should be doing. So, and I just want to point this out in Matthew 24:42. It says, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." There you go. That's to your point, the hour. He didn't say what day, he just said what
Right.
hour. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour, there's that hour again, that you do not expect. Now, it could be a figure of speech, meaning a general period of time. Sure,
Yep.
we could go with that. But there's so many things in here, and as we're going to see tonight, there are so many details that are pointing to specific periods of time. Like, we can see what has already passed, and we can see what is coming, and we can know what to expect. And I think we'll be able to use that information in order to know what we need to do before Christ comes back. And that's really the whole point of all of this,
Right.
is what do we need? What do we do with our time? How much time roughly do we have? Do we have a week? Do we have 3 years? Do we have 7 years? And what do we
You know,
do?
something that somebody who wants to argue every point or every word in the Bible, and we're not really at the end times, something to kind of pay attention to here is today, 20 years ago, this was not true, but today it is. We
Mm-hmm.
have very powerful technology in terms of humanity. Uh, a lot of it is held in secret. It has been used against people
Mm.
in hurtful ways.
Yeah.
Uh, and we got bad guys in the world.
Yeah, we
Now
do.
you you give them three years, that technology, especially with AI working on the technology, is going to develop way beyond where we're at today. Today will be the
True.
Stone Ages 3 years from now,
Oh yeah.
and so because technology accelerates in development.
Oh yeah.
So, are we really going to last 100 years? I don't think so. I think there's some bad guys that have technology in secret and they're going
Yeah.
to use it on the people. All the parts are there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the future holds, but I think we can get some ideas. We can take what we know today and extrapolate, and I think we can even learn from how we behaved and what we expected in the past. So this is a really cool thing about watching and paying attention, is because what has happened, the things that have happened that we can line up with Scripture, tell us if you'll hear them. If speaking to the audience here, if you'll hear them, and if you see these things, they can inform you to what the Scripture was saying. And based on that information, then you can know how to understand the things that it talks about that are still left to come. So let's get into some of this timeline stuff. So let's see. Can you guys see that? You guys have seen
I
this
can.
before.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to point out that the dragon in Revelation 12, let's actually read that. Let's go to Revelation 12. I know we're only supposed to be in Revelation 4 through 7, but this is relevant because this is the anchor point. And the anchor point is where you start. So this is where the timeline starts, right here. So Revelation 12, now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. I'm going to read it from this screen so I actually look like I'm looking at you guys, because I don't know how it looks when I'm like looking over here. If it looks like I'm just looking off in this space, let me read it from here so it looks like I'm looking at you guys. All right, now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth, to devour her child as soon as it was born. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. So this is the point I also wanted to point out here. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Now this is kind of a repeating pattern where we see this 1,260 days. I'm still not entirely convinced that they're all referring to the same 1,260 days, because the next one we have is right here in Revelation 13. So then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns. Actually, this is down a little bit more. So that's basically talking about the beasts coming up out of the sea. Here it is in 5. And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. So 2 things to pay attention here: 42 months. That's the same general period of time for 1,260 days. So I don't know if those are exactly the same period of time. When we're looking at the calendar, I'm curious about your opinion on that. Because there's actually 4 sections over a period of time that could fit this. But it's interesting because he's given authority to continue. And I think that's kind of an important word to hang on here, because it indicates that he may have been persecute. Let's see, what's he given authority to do? He was given authority to continue 42 months. Let's see. Then he opened his mouth. I could have swore that he was to persecute the saints. And I saw one of his heads mortally wounded. So they worshiped the beasts, and he was given a mouth speaking great things and was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy to God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle. It was granted, here it is. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. So we're talking about like a final period of time where he's allowed to make war with the saints.
Right.
It could be just a coincidence, but I think that this is probably referring to the woman who fled into the wilderness where the dragon pursued her for 1,260 days. I could be wrong about that, but I think it does stand to reason that these two periods of time represent the same period of time. All right, now, so now that's what this line is referring to. The dragon only has 42 months left. So, and by dragon, I'm referring to the first beast that comes out of the sea. All right, so we probably actually don't need to look at these. Let's look at this here. So you guys have seen this before, right? So this is my current calendar. I believe that it represents, so when we were reading in Revelation 12, this is the anchor point that was in Revelation 12, the Revelation 12 sign. You guys remember that? Let me refresh your guys' memory for you folks.
Watchful on that. I remember when you really first presented it on Two Witnesses Live, and at that point, nobody else was really saying anything. And you were talking about how you derived that from research that you'd done. And it was very compelling. And I'd gone back and looked at it, and I couldn't see any, misreading or, potential opening for something else. And since that time, all of the different prophetic channels have really adopted this as the anchor point.
Yeah. That's something that we all seem to have in common. Everybody seems to agree that this is that period, what Revelation 12, 1 and 2 is referring to. And it's an anchor point in that you have an alignment in the stars, which the sun, moon, and stars, we use them for keeping time. There are some people who have an issue. Actually, we had some Mormon girls come to the house last night, and you should have seen their eyes. They don't really study the stars. Which is interesting because some of the greatest stuff that I've learned has been from Latter-day Saints who have YouTube channels. There's one, Homestead something or other, where I actually learned about the being clothed with the sun simply means the constellation that the sun is in for a particular month. But it never ceases to amaze me that, so many people, when you talk about the stars, think you're talking about like astrology and witchcraft, divining information. But really, the thing that we're looking at is it's a clock. It's literally a clock. We use the sun and the moon to determine when it's day or night, when a 24-hour period of time has passed. You string enough of those together, you end up with a month, and you can tell the sun will spend a month in a particular section in the sky. We just happen to have pictures associated with those sections of the sky called constellations. So these aren't like witchcraft terms. This is just literally what we have developed through the course of history in order to track months and track days and years even. So the sun will make a complete circle through 12 constellations. So it starts in Virgo and then comes all the way back around and ends in Leo the Lion, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we track a year. So you have in the measurement of a year, measurement of a month, and even days. So, but it's not just the sun and the moon that actually move. It's also the planets. There's 7 planets that move. Now, only 5 of them are visible with the naked eye. 2 of them you have to have some kind of assistance, whether binoculars or a telescope. To me, I do believe that the planets are part of God's timetable, and it just it tells me that God knew we would have the means to know that those planets are there, that we would be able to see them, almost like a hidden gem for our administration, for our day and age. That, like, these two planets, they're further out, but they're going to help you to understand things that are specific for your day and age. Just like when Daniel was told to seal up the stuff until the end, those planets, I think, were hidden intentionally just by the fact that we couldn't see them with our own eyes until the end, when we actually had the tools to be able to seal them, to see them. Because some people bring that up, that they don't count the two planets that you can't see because you can't see them with the naked eye. I don't think that's a good enough reason to discount them. To me, it just says that what they communicate was hidden until we had the means to actually, till knowledge hadn't increased. Because when you look at the sky, everything stays in place with the exception of those 9 celestial bodies. So you have 7 planets and you have the sun and the moon, those things. Now, occasionally we get comets, and some of those do have consistent cycles. But I have yet to actually see a comet land on a day that actually has any meaning. I really want them to, because there's been some really interesting ones, but I have yet to actually see one that actually has panned out to be anything. So I just stick to basically the sun and the moon and the stars. So with all of that being said, this particular alignment where the sun is in Virgo, the woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and Jupiter being in her midsection, it went into retrograde for 42 weeks, which happens to be 9 months, which happens to be the gestation period for a child. And then during that same period of time, on this one particular day, September 23rd, 2017, you had 3 planets join with the 9 planets in Leo, or not planets, stars. These 3 planets joined with the 9 stars in Leo to make a crown of 12 stars. So you have a woman who's clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and pain to be delivered with a crown of 12 stars. This only happens on September 23rd, 2017. It never, ever, ever happens again. It's within a 14,000 year period of time, and I have checked.
I have a bit of a hypothesis on why that is, Watchful.
Why is that?
The Earth right now, the poles are shifting,
Mm-hmm.
and the stars are in the same place. There is, the planets moving,
Yeah.
but the Earth I think, probably has to be tilted a particular direction, maybe not, for those to line up.
I think it has more to do with their orbits. So their orbits are constantly progressing to where, if you think about the Old Testament where it talks about circles within circles, each one of the 7 planets and the sun and the moon. So the sun, I don't think moves. The sun is like the center, but the moon orbits the Earth, and the Earth is one of the 7. There's actually 8 planets. The Earth is one of them. So there's 7 visible planets from Earth. So they orbit, and some of them have really short orbits, like Mercury, which goes around the sun. I think it completes a day in like 12 hours. I can't remember, but it's a really short period of time because it's so close to the sun. So its orbit is much quicker. And then you get out to Earth, and we complete a circle around the sun in 24 hours. But the further you go out, the planets take longer periods of time to basically complete a day, to where, like, I think Jupiter is like 3 months is equal to a day. So the further you go out, they have these slower orbits. So year on year, I can't even remember. I used to have all this stuff memorized.
Well, I think you mean that the Earth goes around the sun in a year. It rotates on its axis in a day.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it goes around in a year. But you get my point. Is the orbits are different the further you go out from the sun, because they're further out. They have a much wider circle.
I think those ones that are way out there may take 100 years or more to go around the sun one time.
Yeah, and that's what makes it this sign so unique is like let's see, I can't remember. I think there are, most of them are over here right now. Uh even I think even like Neptune and Uranus. So like Uranus is over here and Neptune is over here. And they will take a very long time to actually move. Mercury, Mars, and I think it was Venus. They tend to make the journey quite regularly. But
Yeah.
for them to be in this position in a 14,000 year period of time, this alignment never happens. Now there have been
Yeah.
variations of this alignment to where you'll have the sun and the moon are in Virgo almost every year. Now the moon will usually the sun will be here in the I think that actually happens every year because as the sun, so that's not unique because you'll hear people say that the Revelation 12 sign happened in like 2000 BC. You'll hear them say that it happened like 200 years ago, and most of the time they're basing it just on the sun being in Virgo and the moon being at her feet, which that happens every single year. So then the next thing they do is like when the planets are like above her head. So what makes this so unique is I think Jupiter, I should look it up. Jupiter has a very long period of time to it's like maybe I think it's like 42 years that it takes. Let me go look it up. What's Jupiter's orbit?
I'm liking your explanation better than mine, by the way. Makes a lot more sense.
Let's see. Radius. So Jupiter is the fifth planet from the sun, the largest in the solar system. Okay, give me how long does it take to go around? Does anybody know in the comments how long? Oh yeah, hey guys, Christopher's okay. I keep forgetting to start the show with Christopher's good. He's over on Christopher M. Brock. He started another channel that he's been growing. So he'll be on at 6 o'clock tonight. So our regular schedule. So you guys can catch him over there. We've started a secondary channel to continue growing so that we can reach more people. And also, we're doing different things on the different channels, so you guys have some variety. So I don't know if you've noticed, like the pattern of the channel has actually changed to where it's more, conversational, roundtable conversation. We have guests on here that we just go around and talk about things. Where Christopher is building more of a ministry to where doing deliverance and praying and studying and having guests on that he wants to interview and stuff like that. So Christopher's good. It's just he's over at Christopher and Brock right now for now. Does anybody know this
Is
orbit?
that 6 o'clock East Coast time?
Yeah. No, it's 9 o'clock East Coast time. It's 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock
Okay.
East Coast. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So Jupiter has a 12-year orbit. So it's 11.86 years that it takes for it to go around the sun. So you can imagine that this doesn't line up. If it takes 12 years to go around its orbit, the amount of times that it's going to actually, well, number one, be in retrograde in Jupiter is going to be very rare because it's going to be in retrograde in other places. But for it to be in retrograde in Jupiter and for these three planets to be here to form the crown of 12 stars, this only happens on this one day. The variation, so like the one that was 2,000 years ago, which is really close to this one, Jupiter is in conjunction with Regulus. So Regulus is the king planet. I think it's the brightest star in Leo, and Jupiter was in conjunction with it, which conjunction just means that it's so close to it that they look like one star. They're super
So
bright.
if I'm understanding you correctly, Jupiter would really only be in that part of the sky across 7,000 years. It would only be in that part of the sky something less than 700 times. And
Correct.
then
Yeah.
and then we look at another planet, with a long time like that, and
Mm-hmm.
instead of 700, it's going to be, way less. And this is the only time really in
Yeah.
7,000 years that this alignment occurred.
Well, it's even more than that because I've also fast forward to see if this sign ever happens again in the future, and I've gone 7,000 years in the future. So we're literally in a within. It's like this is the middle point between 14,000 years. God sure likes 7 and 14. So this is like the midway. I don't know. This seems like it's really close to the midway point of a 14,000 year period of time.
And this is perfectly described, isn't it? In
It
Revelation
is.
12:1 and 2.
Yeah, another wonder appeared in heaven. So heaven, usually when the scripture is talking about heaven, it's talking about anything above the earth. A lot of people, because of the figures of speech and the visual imagery, like to think of heaven as like another dimension, to where that's where celestial beings are. But scripturally speaking, it's usually referring to looking up in the sky. This is talked about in Job when he talks about the Mazzaroth and the Pleiades. Mazzaroth just means, I think it means circle of animals. Mazzaroth is the Hebrew. But yeah, so another wonder appeared in heaven. So you looking up, and it's a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars, just like it's listed here. So it's literally just marking a day in the calendar. That's what Revelation 12 is doing. So because of that, everybody is using that as the start of their timeline. Let me see. How do I get back?
Right. What was the date that this occurred?
So that was September 23rd, 2017.
Okay. Now, does Daniel, if I remember correctly, Daniel mentions a 10-day period, right?
Are you thinking of Matthew 24, where he says some of you will be thrown into prison for 10 days? There might be a 10-day period in
That could
Daniel.
be. I thought there was a 10-day. And of course, the days, a day in the Bible often means a year.
Yeah,
So,
or even 1,000 years. And
right.
Jesus, or is it Messiah 2027? They go into exhaustive detail on all the references to that and the possible connections.
Yeah, I couldn't
So
see
yeah.
1,000 years. You look at how fast technology's growing.
Mm-hmm.
Good grief. They're going to have all of us blown up before 7,000 years from now.
Right. All right. So let's get into. So this we're supposed to be covering Revelation 4 through 7. So let's talk about why we're talking about that. So Revelation 4 talks about the throne room. So this is John. He says, "After these things I looked up, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me. Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this." So again, a door open in heaven, and heaven being anywhere above the sky. I imagine he was in his prison cell in Patmos, looking up at the sky, and he had a vision and heard a voice that said, "Come up here." This is where I got the idea to actually just go look at the top of the planet and look down, and that's where I found out. Let's look at this. So if you go up and you look down at the North Pole, um, you'll see the Aurora Borealis. So this black thing here is the Earth, like that. See, there you go. So if you look down, this is looking off to the side, but if you look down at Earth, it's surrounded by an emerald green rainbow. So in Revelation 4, when he was taken up, and picking it up in verse 2, it says, "Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne, and he who sat on the throne was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne in appearance like an emerald," which is what you're looking at. So like you can see, like these are the stones right here. So you have jasper and sardius, and then you have emerald. And so throne is just thronos in the Greek. It just basically means a place of rest, or something to sit on. So I'm just taking that to mean that like the earth was like was in his mind like a throne. It could have been that the angel was showing him an actual throne with a rainbow around it, with the intention that it would communicate someday in the future that somebody would look for anything that had a green rainbow around it. Because the green rainbow, it's not your typical rainbow. That's the thing that's interesting is there's not a lot of things that actually make a green rainbow. Your options are pretty limited, because like we're all aware of like the 7 color rainbow that you see when after it rains, right? And the sun is still shining and it shines through at just the right angle. You see the 7 colors. But as far as a green rainbow, there's not really a lot of things that make a green rainbow. Um, the Aurora Borealis does though, and that's kind of been in the news a lot lately. There's the Aurora Borealis has been making appearances all the way down to darn near the equator.
Right. Now I would expect that people uh, down south would see the red of the
Yeah.
aurora. Uh,
Oh, I
and
should have been prepared.
I
I've taken so many pictures of it when it came down in our area, and there's very cool looking red colors.
Yeah, I was seeing red when it came down, and I'm in northern Minnesota, but boy, not very far from where I'm at. When you get out of the trees, we'll see the
Mm-hmm.
green.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try and share. I'll try and share some of my pictures on the community wall a little bit later. Man, we came up with we got some really good pictures. But it's interesting because Revelation 4. So you have the Revelation 12 sign, which is an anchor point. That happened 7 years ago, by the way. And then you have this rainbow around a throne, which really only fits on the earth. Especially when you consider the sardius and the jasper and the emerald. Like those are literally the colors of the aurora borealis.
Yep.
So for me, that's another anchor point. That's another indication that's what he was referring to. So when you're looking down at the earth, so I'm going to continue reading in Revelation 4. So in appearance, and there was a rainbow around the throne, an appearance like an emerald. Around the throne were 24 thrones. Again, thronos just means a place of rest. And on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their head. And from the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices. 7 lamps of fire were burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. So what's interesting here? Oh wait, did we haven't gotten into the living creatures yet? So I want to show you this picture though. This one took me a while to find anything that potentially fit. But when you consider that word throne meaning a place of rest, so I've heard a lot of interpretations of the 24 elders in the book of Revelation. Some people say it's a combination of the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles that Jesus raised up to start his ministry, to start building that temple. Those are the first laborers who started building the temple of God, right? Some people say, well, there's 12 important people from the Old Testament, so the 24 elders will be a combination of those two. Also, I've heard it that it'll be 24 people who, throughout the course of time, have proven themselves, like Moses and Elijah, people who had a particular impact. None of those things really make sense to us in the end time, because so much of this imagery that I personally I've started to see is it's just literally in the stars. So it seems like the context. So in the scripture, context is so important, and in language really, because anything that you're reading, when you're reading from one chapter to the next chapter, the things in the previous chapter inform what's coming and what's been behind. So when you're looking at Revelation 12, which very clearly seems to be pointing to the sun and the moon and the stars in a particular location in the sky, which points to a day, that is the context of that. So my mind, when I was looking at this stuff, I was like, okay, so what else could these things be referring to if they're in the context of the sun, the moon, and the stars? And the only thing I can think of that is 24, that has a period of 24, is 24 hours. Like that is the most rudimentary division of 24 that we have, because everybody experiences 24 hours in a day, right? That's just been true for the all of time. Is a day is divided into 24 hours.
Have you taken a look at the possibility of the 24 being like mountain peaks?
I haven't, no. But I've looked at, so Kip, Troy Brewer had come to a similar conclusion as I did with the hours, but he had gone further and found out that there's actually 24 time zones on the planet.
Okay.
And what's interesting about 24 is they actually delineate periods of rest. So it's like it's a period of time.
Mm.
And it's interesting because as I started looking into this when I was researching it, is there are some, myths and even like the Kabbalah that speak to every hour of the day as a period of dedicated to something that gives praise to God. This was something that I came up with, like, the early morning hours, the birds, when they're singing, they're giving praise to God, and they have their specific period of time, and then with us, the day starts in the evening and ends in the evening. That's how according to Old Testament time reckoning. So that's when man gives praise, right? So it's like they're all this association with the hours and like being it's a loose correlation, but it's literally the only thing that I could come up with in the context as of the 24 elders. But it paints a picture. So like this is what it would look like. It's basically just pointing out that the sun and the moon, because they're clothed with white, like the moon is white, with a crown of gold on their head. And if you continue reading in Revelation 12, no, not 12, 4. Let's see. So we'll pick it up in 4 verse 6. Before the throne, here I can show this tab. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal. In the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and in back. The first living creature was like a lion. Oh, okay, so we don't get to the 24 elders casting their crowns yet. I'm going to read this and tell you what I think it is. The first living creature was like a lion. The second living creature was like a calf. The third living creature had a face like a man. And the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. The 4 living creatures, each having 6 wings, which I have a theory for the 6 wings, were full of eyes around and within. And they do not rest day or night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. Whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, You are worthy, O Lord, to give glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created. Okay, so that I know that was a ton of stuff to take in. So basically we have 2 things here. We have the 4 living creatures, which if you go back to this image here, when you're looking down at the North Pole, and clearly we don't have to like be physically up there. We can do this with computers. When you're looking down at the North Pole, which is, I think, another sign that indicates that like this information was literally meant for us in this day and time, because by using computers, we're able to actually see this picture. So you've got the lion, which it just blows my mind that this actually matches the description. So in the corners here, you have the lion, the calf, the face of a man, not the entire body, just the face, and the flying eagle. So those are the 4 living creatures. Now there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about in regards to like what they represent, but for all intents and purposes, as far as the timeline, is they just mark sections in the where the sun and the moon go through. So when it talks about them having 6 wings, each one of them has 6 degrees that they cover in the sky. So if the circle of 12, each one of these covers. How do I explain this? Technically, they span 3 months, right? So each one represents a period of 3 months where the sun is. So when the 24 elders cast their crown, so remember we read, and when they get, let's see, the 24 elders fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne. What when this really clicked for me was when I noticed eclipse happening in sections of the skies related to these living creatures. And that's how I came to this timeline here. We're kind of running. We got 15 minutes left, so I have to do like 6 hours worth of talking in 15
Let's
minutes.
just stay with the same pace. We can pick it up in another show.
Yeah. I'm trying to just do an overview to get everybody who's like new to the channel, like kind of up to speed on stuff that where we are. And this is really the kind of what I want to cover is this timeline. So I'm going to kind of switch into so Revelation 4 basically gives us the signs to look for in order to identify the seals being opened, right?
Right.
So this is my timeline. So I believe that Revelation 12, where it talks about the woman, is the start of the timeline. And in Revelation 13, when it talks about the two different beasts, concludes over here in 2031. So basically, Revelation 12 and 13 cover a 14-year period of time. There's that number 14 again, like 14,000 years. But basically, Revelation 12 and 13 cover a 14-year period of time. And Revelation 4, 5, 6, and 7 give the details of what happens in that 14-year period of time. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
Revelation 12 starts here. Revelation 13 ends here. So you have the sign of the woman clothed with the sun with the moon under her feet. You have the dragon being cast to the earth. Then you have the beast rising from the sea. And then you have the beast rising from the earth. And then you have the end. So that's just like the big overview. So Revelation 12 and 13, that's the anchor point. That just like everybody at least agrees on Revelation 12. And just yesterday, I'll actually post this on the timeline. Nelson Waters actually came out and pretty much, for all intents and purposes, gave his calculations, which line up pretty much exactly with this timeline here. So people are starting to come into an agreement where they're seeing things that like, yeah, this seems to be the timeline that we're on. So we may not know exactly when Christ is going to come back, but we're getting pretty darn close to knowing.
Right. It's
So
possible,
the other thing that
possible we know the day. It's possible we end up figuring out the day, but we don't know the day and hour.
That's exactly right. Well, if you think about it, even the parable of the 10 virgins, they got the call when the bridegroom was coming. And they were able to have that conversation. Like they got the 5 that were prepared had their lamps already to go out, and then the 5 that weren't prepared had to go buy more oil, and then they ended up being late. So there's an indication that we will know closer to the time when it's going to happen, which is really good news. So I want to talk a little bit about this timeline. So I'm just going to I think we are probably going to have to do another show on this. Because I can see in the chat, there's a lot of people who have never heard this before. So we have videos on this. Some of our earliest videos go into extreme detail on this, and there's not very much has changed. The big thing that's changed from the first presentation that we did, so you can go to twowitnesseslive.com, and the video on the front page is, I think it's a 3-hour video where we cover in detail the seals being opened. The only thing that's really changed is that was assuming that the rapture would happen within 7 years, which the 7-year mark happened on October 2nd, 2024. So we've already passed that 7-year mark and we're still here. So what that tells me is that we still have 7 years left. And that fits because we haven't seen all the prophecy actually fulfilled yet. So like we don't know what the beast from the sea is. We don't know what the 1,260 days is actually marking. We don't know what the mark of the beast is. I can tell you, I don't, based on what has happened over the last 7 years, I don't agree with any of the narratives that people are saying right now about the Antichrist and even the Great Tribulation. Because for the last 7 years, I've been trying to make that story fit, and it has just continually fallen flat and fallen flat. So in the same way that like the things that have happened over the 7 years, and this goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning, that expectation doesn't meet reality. I didn't say it exactly like that, but we had a certain expectation of how things would happen. But as they have happened, now we have an understanding of what the things actually meant. So, like the Revelation 12 sign. Like,
Say watchful.
yeah.
Was 2017, 2024, and 2031 also Jubilee years?
No, so the way a Jubilee year works is it's 49 years, and then in the 50th year, that's a Jubilee. I
Okay.
believe that 2024 through 2031 might be, and I think it was Messiah 2027. You know that video that they did, or Jesus 2027? No, Jesus 2027 is a website. Messiah 2027 is the YouTube video.
I was thinking a Jubilee was 7 years, and then there was like a grand Jubilee every 49 years or
Yeah, you're
50
right.
years.
Yeah, so that is a Jubilee. So a Jubilee is it can be so every 50 years, the 50th year is a Jubilee. But then the Grand Jubilee is when you have 7 weeks of years, which is 7 years times 7 is 490 years, I think, and it's the last 7 years is the big something like that. I think that's what
Okay.
you're referring to. So yeah, I mean, it could be that this last 7 years is that last week.
Okay.
And going back to what I originally talked about, like with the 1,260 days and the 42 months, both of those represent 3.5 years. Which it's interesting because if you take 14, if you take 7 and you divide it by 2, you end up with two 3.5 year segments, and that scales out to 14 years. So if you take 14 years and divide it by 4, you end up with 4 segments of 3.5 years.
Right.
So what we're trying to figure out is where the anchor point is to start that 1,260 days. Which there's a couple of really interesting hypotheses right now. One of them is when Elon Musk and Donald Trump first did their public appearance together. If you count 1,260 days, it lands on a festival day, I think. So that's one that's really interesting. Another one is Nelson Waters just came up with, and I have this on this chart here. He has and I actually double checked his calculations. I think he's wrong, but he has April 16th, 2028. If you add 1,260 days, so April 16th is the Festival of First Fruits, which also happens to be Easter, which I still need to check that because those typically don't line up on the same day. But he was saying that if you add 1,260 days, it lands on Yom Kippur, and it also happens to be 2,500 year period of time. But he was saying that it was in April 29, 2031. When I did the calculation, I got April 29, 2032. So I still need to kind of follow up on his day calculation. But that's the big question that I'm trying to answer is when does that 1,260 days start? Or is it just referring to these periods of time? Because there's a couple places in the Bible. Because in Daniel, when Daniel is talking to the angel who puts his hands up and there's like 2 rivers, he says time and a half of times, which can be reconciled to be 3.5 years. Because you have 1 plus 2 plus a half, that's 3.5. So this is just to kind of wrap this up. This is what it looks like where we are, and it is my opinion that we're in seal number 4 right now. That the 7 seals span the 14-year period of time, and we'll have to get into more detail on why I think that. So a lot of people actually agree that seal number one opened with the pandemic, because that, I have celestial reasons. So if, in this, by looking at this from Revelation 4 and 5, there were eclipses. Matter of fact, I have the days somewhere here. Anyway, I have one of these that has the days on it. So there was an eclipse in this section of the sky, because remember how their wings mark out the sections of the sky? There was an eclipse on December 19th, 2019. No, December 26th, 2019. And that was actually the first case of COVID in Wuhan. And that was in this section of the sky. I think that is seal number one, because I think we all agree that that went forth conquering and to conquer. I mean, that's a good description of a global pandemic, something that affects the entire globe. And then there was another eclipse. So the reason I was looking at eclipses is because of the elders. So when the sun and the moon come together and form a crown, remember the elders have a crown of gold on their heads. And when they cast their crown before the throne, that's when they give glory and praise. So I use that as like a marker for, like, this is a time to look at the sky and see what it's saying. And if you associate those eclipses and look at what's happening on the planet, it's really quite often that there's global events happening on the planet. But in the last 7 years, though, the most notable days are the pandemic, which seems to be seal number one. And then on December 14th, 2020, that's when the Electoral College declared the Biden to be the winner of the election. And it just so happened that that was the same day that the Trump administration turned over Operation Warp Speed to the Biden administration, which that was the effort with the jab, right? It was the Biden administration that actually took that what was the product of that Operation Warp Speed and used it on the entire world, which is interesting because seal number two is the rider on the red horse who is given power to take peace, and he's given a great sword. A lot of people think that seal number two is indicating like war and conflicts. But if you read the text, it says that that's just the day the rider on the horse is given the power to take peace, which I argue is the office of the presidency. And I think we have seen that happen over the course of the last, 4 years, is conflict has been just crazy across the planet. And likewise, the jab was used as a weapon. So how many people lost their job because of that? A lot. How many people, were I have to be really careful what I say about that, because YouTube will actually strike the channel. So you guys know what I'm talking about. But it's interesting that all started on December 14th, 2020. So that seems to me like it was seal number two. And then another one was June 10th, 2021. There was an eclipse in Taurus over here. That was when Joe Biden and Boris Johnson signed the New Atlantic Charter, which basically connected the United States and the United Kingdom together as a single entity. And that played a big role in the conflicts around the world. And during this entire time, inflation has been going crazy. And then on October 7th, 2023, that's when the Al-Aqsa flood happened. That there wasn't actually an eclipse on that day. The eclipse was 7 days later. And the eclipse was in, I think it was in Virgo, which is in Leo's quadrant, because their wings cover a particular section of the sky. So it was actually in Virgo, which I think was in the wings of the lion. But so if you come back over here to this timeline, that's basically covering this first. So like from 2017 to 2024, we've just come through those four living creatures. That's my opinion. I believe that seal number one, seal number two, seal number three, and seal number four just occurred in the last 7 years. And right now we're in the middle of seal number four. And we're getting ready to go into seal number five, because a lot of people are impatient and looking for the rapture, right? How many people are still putting out videos saying that it's going to happen on, the 20th of this month, or, on Christmas or January 20th. Uh, so yeah, so basically that brings us. This is Revelation 4, 5, and 6. But six actually comes to 2024 and starts to go into 2025, and then seal number 7. So Revelation 4, 5, and 6 gives the details, which that's actually a pattern in the scripture. Same thing happens in Genesis. If you go read Genesis 1, it gives a 7-day summary. And then in Genesis 2 and 3, it gives you the details of what happened on each one of those days. So I don't think it's any coincidence that the book of Revelation does the same thing, where you have Revelation 12 and 13 give the summary of a 14-year period of time. And then you have like Revelation 4, 5, and 6, and 7, actually, probably all the way up. It's probably Revelation 4 through 11. Yeah, that's more accurate. Revelation 4 through 11 actually gives you all the details of what happens during that 14-year period of time. Because you have the 7 seals being opened, you have the 7 trumpets, you have the 7 bowls of judgment, you have the 2 witnesses. So what has happened so far seems to be Revelation 4, 5, and 6. And we're now getting ready to go into 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, where you've got the 2 witnesses probably doing their thing for this 42-month period of time. And then as things start to get way worse, you're going to get, the bowls and the trumpets and the mark of the beasts and stuff in this section of time. So yeah, we definitely need to do another show on this because we didn't really get to talk about this very much. It really plays into what we've been talking about the last couple of days with narcissism and empathy.
It does. Yeah. Well, do you want to pick it up from like the 5th seal next show?
So what did I have scheduled? I was trying to do a big overview, but we could, because tomorrow we have Gregory is going to come give an interesting presentation on his idea of the 2 witnesses.
Okay.
Which, unless you guys have watched his video, it'll be new to you. I do still believe that it's very likely Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Just because it seems like they're guys. When you read about the 2 witnesses, anybody who tries to kill them, that seems like, death is a human thing, right? So I think it's 2 guys in 2 groups. I still hold to that opinion, and we can talk about that tomorrow. That'll be an interesting conversation.
All right.
Yeah, so today today is the 7 seals. We didn't really get to talk about the 144,000. I think the 144,000 have been being sealed ever since the Revelation 12 sign. Maybe since the seal number 1 opened. Probably since seal number 1 opened, because that's when so many people felt quote unquote activated. But it wouldn't surprise me if the 144,000 aren't sealed now. Like the sealing is done. I could be wrong about that. But it just seems to me that there's so many people that are leading and speaking out and trying to sound the alarm. It wouldn't surprise me if those aren't the 144,000. I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of my feeling.
I'm really looking forward to hearing Greg tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. When he first was talking about this, it was after hours. We were just kind of hanging around talking. And initially, I kind of thought he was crazy in the same way that people thought I was crazy when I said Donald Trump and Elon Musk could be the 2 witnesses. But the more that we were talking about it, he actually made some really good points. I'm like, that actually makes really good sense. So it's going to be fun. And it ties directly into this stuff. And it may actually help us kind of look forward to what's coming in the future. So what else? You have anything else you wanted to talk about here? We didn't really get into the 144 of the trumpets. This was really the meat of it. Getting through the 4 seals and getting into this is what's immediately relevant to us. If you guys walk away from anything with this show, it's that prophecy has been fulfilled, is being fulfilled, and we're very likely in the middle of it right now. And we have information. So based on observation, we have information about what to expect in the future. I'm really excited about it. because the stuff that you and I have been talking about with empathy and narcissism
Yeah,
just makes sense.
it
Like,
does.
the bride is supposed to make herself white before he comes. Zion is supposed to come out of Babylon. These are figures of speech that represent doing something. There's other ones. The servants are supposed to be keeping themselves busy, feeding the poor, clothing the naked, visiting those in prison. That's like all of
Yeah.
these things are pointing to like we should be doing good works while we wait.
Service items are
Service.
much more
Yeah.
common out of empaths than they are out of
Yeah.
narcissists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just like this is I think we're going into a period of service. This next 42-month period, a lot of things are going to be I think we're going to see a lot of things getting fixed. And we're also going to see another government rise up as a result of it too, which is going to persecute the saints. So it's going to be a combination of service and persecution. So I
Right.
think that's what we can expect to come. We can talk more about that tomorrow when we're talking about the two witnesses, because Gregory's got some really and I think it's multi-layered. I think that he's probably right about his point. I know I'm being super suspicious about what it is. I don't want to spill the beans. If you guys want to know what he thinks, go watch his videos. His channel is Yasplain, YAHSPLAIN, Yasplain. He's done some videos on his version of the two witnesses. So if you guys wanted to do some prep work before he comes on the show tomorrow. But yeah, so exciting times ahead. So definitely looking forward to a period of service and probably tribulation. And it's probably going to get progressively worse towards the end, especially considering like when you think about what Trump has like already done. Like he's not even president and he's already pretty much affected world peace, which that's biblical. I know a lot
Yep.
of people are going to use that to say that he's the Antichrist. But we should really get into some of the depths of those. One of the things that I found with the narrative and the expectation about the end times is for so many years we've collapsed so many sections together in order to make this story that we haven't focused on the details. So like this whole idea of the Antichrist, I do not believe that most people have that correct. Number one, that they're not even using the right
What?
term. The fact that people don't use the term right drives me insane. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I'm just saying I've got a deal coming up here, and so I'm kind of getting short on time.
Oh yeah. We're at our hour. I'm sorry. This is the stuff I could talk about for ages. So we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. God bless you guys. Shalom, shalom. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Take care, guys. God bless.